Hello, John Kelly Jr. alongside Ron Ratner. A big week on the hardwood here in the NEC. And Ron, let's start with the biggest turnaround of them all, the Bryant Bulldogs.
What a story. Bryant Bulldogs. Who would have thought? A year ago, still in their NCAA reclassification, winners of 2 games. This year, a whole new story. Got some new players, but they still have a great coach in Tim O'Shea. They've gone from 2 wins to 13 wins. First place in the NEC with a 6-0 record. You know, who would have thought? I think that the addition of De'Ami Starks in the backcourt has been a real boost for them. It's given them a shooter, someone who can give them a shot from distance, from long range in a clutch spot. They have Alex Francis, been with the league. He's a junior. He was our rookie of the year. Fantastic season, multi-time player of the week. And Frankie Dobbs, who is the floor general. And he comes from a coaching, his dad's assistant coach on the team, and always seems to be there in the clutch for them. There's some other pieces there as well. And he, in a league that's full of parity, he has them running on all cylinders now. And I think what you're seeing now is a team with a little swagger. And they're coming into gyms thinking that we're going to win because we're good, and they are good. I mean, look at their non-conference season. Wins over Boston College, and really impressive, a win at Lehigh when C.J. McCollum was still healthy. So they made their statement in non-conference, came into the league, and they're 6-0, and they have a 2-game lead on the pack already, 6 games, third of the way into the season.
Talking about that pack, it is a logjam 3-team pack behind Bryant, St. Francis, Brooklyn, Robert Morris behind them as well, and some big matchup, Sacred Heart as well in that category. All of them collide this week.
Yeah, I think people expected Robert Morris to be there. They've been in the last 4 NEC championship games. They started out with 2 losses in the league, but since then they're 4-0, and I think they've turned it around. Andy Toole has them playing the way he wants them to go. Velton Jones, of course, one of the great players in the NEC and a great leader in the conference. St. Francis Brooklyn, also a team that I think you kind of expected to be there. They've sort of reinvented themselves as a defensive juggernaut now. Under Glenn Breaker, they're allowing less than 60 points a game in league play, and when you play defense, you're always going to be in games. So then you have Sacred Heart, who was picked 6th in the league, really struggled in the non-conference season, but now Shane Gibson, it's January, and that means Shane Gibson is coming to play, and he's dropping 25s and 30s every night, and Sacred Heart finds itself, despite being really hurt with injuries, their starting backcourt has been out for the entire year. Justin Swidowski, one of the better big men in the league, he's hurt, yet they're at 4-2 now and in a challenging position. So I think you're seeing a lot of parity in the league this year, one of those years where anybody can win on every given night. But what you have is some teams starting to separate themselves just a bit. And as we move on, we'll see how it goes. Another big week coming up.
It's a jam-packed weekend on NEC-TV. Of course, the headline game, the Battle of Brooklyn between LIU and St. Francis Brooklyn. You mentioned the points, Ron. LIU dominates the boards. That should be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, they've hit the boards in league play, and it doesn't matter when LIU plays St. Francis in the Battle of Brooklyn. It doesn't matter if one team's at the top of the standings, the other's at the bottom, or if they're both good or both not so good. It's a great game. It's maybe my favorite regular season game of the year. I've been to so many of these. There have been so many classics throughout the years, and we're going to have a special treat later on in the podcast talking about the Battle of Brooklyn. But we've seen some of the best players in this league go at it. They know each other. They're from the neighborhood. They see each other all the time. They're only a mile away. They walk to the games, and we'll see it this week on MSG2 and on Fox College Sports this Thursday. The Battle of Brooklyn, number 38.
And also one of the key features, please stick around at halftime. Jason Brickman will talk about his journey to Brooklyn from the Lone Star State and a little comment on LIU's back-to-back NEC titles, trying to be the first team to do it 3 times this year.
Yeah, we've been doing some nice features, and I think this one, I've previewed this one with Jason Brickman where he talks about his journey to come from San Antonio to Brooklyn, and then moves on and talks about his team's 2 championship runs.
John Kelly Jr. alongside Ralph Ventre. We're talking a little NEC women's hoops and the Quinnipiac Bobcats, unscathed in conference play at 6-0, and a little bit of space in those standings, Ralph.
Yeah, absolutely. Quinnipiac, the last remaining unbeaten of the NEC's 12 teams. Tricia Fabry's Bobcats are off to a phenomenal start this year. They went 9-2 in non-conference play, and then so far 6-0 in the league, 15-2, and up to number 10 in the nation, number 10 in the College Insider mid-major top 25 poll. So Quinnipiac is obviously the team to beat thus far in the Northeast Conference.
We thought Sacred Heart was no longer around at 1-3. They rally with a sweep on the road, and they are back, Ralph.
Absolutely. Sacred Heart is back, but we never thought they were out of it. An Ed Swanson team, John, is never out of it. As a matter of fact, Sacred Heart has never finished lower than a tie for third place in the Northeast Conference standings, and they've been in the league since '99. But it definitely was a rocky road for them early. They were at 1-3 in league play, and that was a point that they had never been at in their program's history. So obviously they're backed into a corner. They have a tough road trip out in the Keystone State this past weekend, but Coach Swanson's Pioneers answered the bell. And it all started with their point guard, Erica Norman. Of course, Erica is one of our Choice Hotels co-players of the week, and she absolutely had a phenomenal weekend out there in Pennsylvania. A near quadruple double at St. Francis U. So Sacred Heart is back, 3-3 in the league, tied for 6th place, right in the mix, just as we expected.
We have a 4-way tie below Quinnipiac, Central Connecticut State, Monmouth, Mount St. Mary's. Who do you think poses the biggest threat to Quinnipiac?
It's too early to tell, John. I mean, really everyone in the NEC is vulnerable this year. Quinnipiac is 6-0, but don't be surprised if they get picked off once or twice along the way, because these coaches and these players know each other so well. And to be honest with you, the talent at the top, there's not a huge gap from the talent at the bottom to the talent at the top. So it could be anyone's game. You mentioned Mount St. Mary's is 4-2 in that 4-way logjam for second place. Well, the Mount was a team that was picked toward the bottom of the preseason poll this year. So FDU's another one. They're 3-3 in the league, and the coaches didn't even select them to be one of the top 8 teams this year and make the tournament. But here they are at 3-3, a third of the way through. They would be in the playoffs if it started today. So we do have quite the logjam underneath Quinnipiac in the standings. But the good news is Monmouth could really make a statement this weekend because they're at Sacred Heart on NEC-TV, and the same can be said for Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh will actually have a chance to knock off Quinnipiac in front of the NEC-TV cameras this Saturday.
Both games start at 2:30 and then 4 o'clock. Ralph, what milestones should we try to look for this week in NEC Hoops in women?
Well, as far as milestones go, you have Alicia Womack, who's moving up the Monmouth all-time scoring list, and getting into that game, the Monmouth-Sacred Heart matchup, which will tip off at 4. It will air live on Fox Sports, Fox College Sports Pacific, and ESPN3, tip off at 4. But in that Sacred Heart Monmouth matchup, you have Alicia Womack, and then on the other side, you have another explosive scoring guard in Gabby Washington. Washington was our NEC Rookie of the Year last year. Womack, she's a senior. She's been banged up a bit, but she's back in the starting lineup, and she has led Monmouth in scoring for each of the last 4 years. So watch out for Washington and Womack, 2 explosive scoring guards in that game right there. And, of course, Sacred Heart, Erica Norman, the point guard, she makes those Pioneers tick. Of course, she had the big week out in PA last week. So that's a great matchup. Then on the Quinnipiac FDU side, Quinnipiac and FDU will tip off at 2:30, and they'll air live on FCS Central and ESPN3. But in that game, take a look at the post players. You have Brittany McQuain for Quinnipiac. She's a junior. She was a Choice Hotels NEC Player of the Week earlier in this season. She's a double-double threat, although she's not averaging a double-double. But then on the other side, on the Fairleigh side, you have a sophomore center by the name of Erica Livermore, and she is averaging a double-double. In fact, she is one of 4 NEC players who are averaging double figures in points and rebounds this year. So there have been a lot of sensational individual performances around the league. A lot of big numbers, eye-popping numbers around the league this year, and Erica Livermore is certainly responsible for some of those. So it'll be interesting to see how she does against a great team in Quinnipiac and a good post player in Brittany McQuain.
Should be an excellent week of NEC Women's Hoops. For Ralph Ventre, I'm John Kelly Jr. for NEC On the Run Hoops.
This is Ron Ratner, Associate Commissioner of the Northeast Conference. I'm here with a special guest today, Greg Fox, the Associate Athletic Director at LIU Brooklyn. Of course, people will be asking, why are we interviewing Greg Fox? Who's Greg Fox? Well, Greg Fox is an FDU grad, has been in and around the Northeast Conference for really going on almost 30 years now, and you're in your 17th year at LIU. So, Greg, you've seen LIU's rise to prominence in the 90s and then the Blackbirds' renaissance, so to speak, the last few years. And during your time there, and even before you got to LIU, you've been witness to what I would think is the NEC's greatest rivalry, the Battle of Brooklyn between LIU and St. Francis. You have two teams that are a mile away, and kids can walk to the games. So, you and me, personally, we've often talked about some of these classic Battle of Brooklyn games, so I thought it would be a good chance to get some inside scoop from you with the two teams squaring off tomorrow on MSG2 and Fox College Sports at 7 p.m. Let's take a trip down memory lane, talk about some of those games, talk about some of the players that have made the rivalry special. First off, what makes, in your mind, this rivalry such a special one?
Well, I'll tell you, Ron, one thing you can definitely say when it comes to LIU and St. Francis, just throw the records out the window. I don't care if LIU is 18-2 and St. Francis is 2-18. Throw the records out the window. This game is going down to the wire. It really doesn't matter. The rivalry is unbelievably intense. With Jack Perry now at the helm and Glenn Breaka, they're friends. They know each other well. I don't know, if it's as bitter as it's been in years past. I remember back, in the mid to late 90s, the John Thomas St. Francis teams and the Mike Campbell, Charles Jones, Richie Parker, LIU teams. It was pretty intense back then. I don't know if there's any real distaste between the two teams right now, but regardless, it's going to be a terrific game. And let me tell you, you put 500 people in the Pope Physical Education Center, and it sounds like 5,000 because the acoustics in that place are just unbelievable.
Yeah, we put up on our NEC Vault yesterday a full game between LIU and St. Francis back from the late 90s. That was during LIU's heyday, and really it was actually right when St. Francis was starting to come into their own, and they'd go on a nice run the next few years. But the one thing I noticed, and it was at the Pope Center, was how charged up the fans were. I mean, because it's a mix of both teams' fans, and right there you got to see, as you mentioned, John Thomas doing his thing. And then on the other side, you had guys like Mike Campbell and Charles Jones doing their thing. What was it like in that, particularly that mid-90s era?
Well, with the Blackbirds back then, we were a very, very talented team. We had a guy in Charles Jones who played parts of 2 seasons in the NBA. Mike Campbell, who I think, if he had a little more bulk on him, could have had a nice career in the NBA. He ended up playing overseas for a number of years, became a street ball legend. Richie Parker, who was a highly touted high school prospect and had a good career at LIU. But the thing with the Blackbirds back then, you either loved us or you hated us. There was really no middle ground with the Blackbirds. And even if you watch that game with, Charles Jones making that big move on Richie Dominguez at the end and finishing, just the way he reacted towards the crowd, he was very, very animated, let's just say. And again, we were kind of a renegade bunch back in the mid to late 90s. Jones went to Rutgers. He was one of the leading scorers at Rutgers as a freshman. Didn't see eye to eye with Bob Wenzel, who was the head coach back then, and he had a relationship with the LIU head coach, Ray Haskins, so Haskins brought him to LIU. LIU became the only team in '96 to offer Richie Parker a Division I scholarship, the much ballyhooed Parker, and that worked out very well. And he had several off the court problems while he was in high school, and I think a lot of teams just missed the boat on Campbell, who was just an unbelievable talent. But we were a renegade bunch back then, and if you didn't bring your A game, you were going to get run out of the building, and St. Francis knew that. And they were hyped up to play LIU every chance they had, and that game that's on NEC Front Row, I'm sure that was a game that didn't sit well with St. Francis administration, because that's a game they had won.
That was a time where we talked about how when Ron Gagnon and sitting next to him on the bench is, the current head coach, Glenn Breaker, was starting to bring in that influx of talent, from Puerto Rico and foreign talent, and you had your Angel Santanas and your Henry Lalanis throwing up threes from all angles, and Richie Dominguez was a fantastic player. At that point, did you think that, okay, we're taking this rivalry to the next level as St. Francis started their ascension?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I thought there was no doubt, with Dominguez and Rocky Osorio and John Thomas, and then, soon after that, Torrey Cavalieri, the great point guard at St. Francis. They went on a nice run those next couple of years, and I know they blew a 20-point lead in the NEC championship game to Monmouth soon after that. At LIU, they were coming off a championship in '97. We were the media darlings in New York City. We were a 13 seed in the NCAA tournament. We were brash. We were brazen. We thought for sure we were going to beat Villanova, and that was a Villanova team that had 4 NBA players, including Tim Thomas and Alvin Williams. A terrific Villanova team that, we gave a little scare in the NCAA tournament. The following year, we had another unbelievable regular season and had a 10-point lead against FDU in the second half of the championship game. And then it kind of came unglued for LIU at that point. And, FDU did a terrific job, great job by head coach Tom Green, taking us out of what we like to do, which is, run and press and make it a helter-skelter game. And after we, lost that game to FDU, we played well in the NIT that year, losing a close game to Dayton. And then after Ray Haskins left, it took us a number of years to really, get back to that level again. And it wasn't until, maybe Jim Ferry's 7th year where we really began to put it all together with Jay Tonowisa, and then, of course, bringing in Julian Boyd, who, for my money, has been the best player in this conference the last few years. Jamal Olasaware. It had been a while for LIU, so it's been good to get back to that level again.
So in looking through the listing of all the Battle of Brooklyn results, I saw that LIU won 4 in a row during their heyday in the 90s. Then when LIU took the dip, as you were talking about, then the Terriers won 5 straight from 99 to 2003. And during that time, that's when St. Francis, as you mentioned, went to a championship game. And then in 2003 would go on to play again in the championship game, playing Wagner. But in that year, I not only would some say, I think you'd be crazy if you didn't say, was maybe the best game in the history of this conference, much less the Battle of Brooklyn. It was a very famous 142 to 140 double overtime win for St. Francis in the Battle of Brooklyn. And in that game, one of my personal favorites, Antoine Doby, scored an NEC record 53 points. But he also had 15 assists in the game. He played all 50 minutes. I was not at this game, and I've seen highlights, and we've posted highlights, but you were at the game. If you could tell us about how that all played out, it would be fantastic.
Let me tell you, Ron, it was unbelievable. Jim Ferry is no longer here as the head coach at Duquesne, but I'd say every 3 or 4 months, Jim Ferry and I would sit down and just laugh at that game. It was what Doby did that night. It was just incredible. I mean, again, he had the full arsenal working. There's nothing St. Francis could have done that would have stopped him. They could have put 2, 3, 4 guys on him. Didn't matter. He was going around them. He was maybe the quickest kid I've ever seen in this conference. And, he wasn't a great outside shooter, but that day in the Pope Physical Education Center, Antoine Doby was like Mark Price. He wasn't missing. He was getting in the lane, doing his little teardrop, pulling up from 20. It didn't matter what St. Francis was doing that day. Antoine Doby was scoring. And, yeah, there were occasions when he did pass the ball that day, and every time he, found a teammate, his teammate was scoring. So, listen, maybe it was a combination of it being Doby's day, it being, anybody who shot the ball that day. I have to say the rims were on the soft side back in the day at St. Francis. But he had the full arsenal going that day, and there was no stopping him. And the one thing that stands out, and I love Antoine. Antoine was just a terrific talent. He's having a great career overseas. But we lost that game, and it was brutal. That was just one of the toughest pills to swallow, since I've been at LIU, losing that game. But I have to say the happiest man in Brooklyn Heights that night was Antoine Doby, and we lost. He had the biggest smile on his face. I'll remember him holding his daughter at the end of the game, being so excited that what did he score, 53 in that game?
Points, yeah.
53 points, 15 assists. He couldn't have been happier, but unfortunately his team lost the game. But I get it, and Antoine, and knowing Antoine as I did, he was really all about team, and wanted to win badly. But it was just such a special night for him individually that it kind of got the better of him, and I think. I don't think he would have traded. 53 and 15. I mean, how many players in the history of college basketball has anybody in the history of college basketball ever put up 53 and 15?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not only did he do 53 and 15, he hit a shot just inside half court to send the game to overtime.
Right,
which we play ad nauseum on our NEC-TV broadcast from year to year because it's such a great clip.
It was really an amazing game, and I think I remember other guys having nice games. The Daewon Garys and the Jaja, another one of your favorite names, Jaja Bay from Queens, had a good game.
30 points that game.
Yeah. Let me tell you, Ja Bay could score with the best of them. He was a sinewy 6'7". He must have been about $185, $190, soaking wet. But Ja Bay was a 1,000-point scorer at LIU. He could fill it up. And again, those rims in the Pope Physical Education Center back 10 years ago weren't exactly. I'm not sure if the NEC was doing rim testing back in those days, but
even looking at go ahead.
If you get it up on the rim, back then, it was going down. So
get the roll. There were plenty of shooters. I'm looking at the box score now, and here are some names on the St. Francis side that all-star caliber guys. You had Torrey Cavalieri, as you mentioned, Clifford Strong, who was a tremendous power forward for them.
Right.
During that, the early
his name was befitting.
Absolutely. John Quintana off the bench, 31 points that night. That he could really shoot the ball.
He could.
And Bronski Dockery and Christian Brown and Chris Stockwell. That was a heck of a team they had during that time. And, there's one of those teams that just they couldn't get over the hump in the championship game, but they were there for like a 5-year stretch. They're as good as anybody in the league.
They were tough, St. Francis. They could always shoot the ball. They played hard. I never thought they were a great defensive team. That's what even the team that I saw last year and that I'm probably going to see tomorrow night. Very, very talented. They could shoot it. They move well without the ball. They run good stuff. I think Glenn Brake is a terrific coach and even a better person. But I think there's something missing defensively there that's been missing for a number of years. I think, I don't know, maybe a little more effort, maybe a little bit different philosophy defensively, and I think St. Francis can get right back.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on in NEC Battle of Brooklyn history. So we go through some leaner years for both programs, but then we hit the last 3 seasons. And this is as good as it gets. So in 2010, we had a 3-overtime game where St. Francis just keeps on coming, hitting late shots and rainbow Stefan Perunisic three-pointers and win it in the third overtime. Then we have 2011. We have C.J. Garner hitting a shot at the buzzer in a famous non-TV game. It was supposed to be televised, but we had satellite issues and it didn't get on the air. And then last year, in a game that we just put up on NEC Front Row today as part of the NEC Vault, where Jamal Lasawir goes 11 for 11 from the field, has the game of his life, in I thought one of the best Battle of Brooklyn games I've seen out at the rack. LIU wins that one. So now I think we're in a new era where both teams, where both programs now, obviously LIU's won 2 straight championships. The Terriers are on the rise. So now you got both teams kind of clicking, and we meet again tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I know this St. Francis team is going to be very, very hungry, and that's going to be tough for us. That's going to be tough. We're playing better basketball. You know, we've been in every game this year, even, you know, we had a few of our kids suspended for the first 2 conference games against Sacred Heart and Quinnipiac. We were in those games. We had a chance to win, even without those guys. You know, Julian Boyd, again, who for my money has been the best player in the Northeast Conference the past couple of years, unfortunately tore his ACL earlier in the year at Rice. He's out. So, you know, Blackbirds are shorthanded. You know, not too many people talk about the loss of Mike Culpo from the last 4 years. Culpo, best shooter on the team, and even more important than being the best shooter on the team for the Blackbirds, kid was just tough as nails. And I don't want to minimize the effect of the loss of the effect of Culpo's loss, what it's had on this team. So, listen, you know, no team has ever won 3 straight in this conference, and you could see every game has been a struggle for the Blackbirds. You know, we've won the last couple, but you know, it's in very, very difficult fashion. Nothing is coming easy, and you know, now going into a hostile environment at St. Francis, it's going to be a very, very tough game for LIU to win tomorrow. I think this is a game that, you know, the Blackbirds just need to be in the game at halftime. You know, we need to look up at the scoreboard. It needs to be, you know, 42-38, maybe St. Francis by 4, you know, 41-36. Just be in the game at the half, and be in the game, you know, maybe at the 8-minute timeout of the second half, and then just try to steal one, because that's going to be a very, very tough spot for the Blackbirds tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things, no matter how a team looks on paper, it's always difficult in my mind to recreate chemistry from year to year, because even when you lose role players, boy, they play roles, and sometimes you have a 4-year player and they're gone, like you had with Kyle Johnson and David Hicks when they left, and it was a slow start to last season. So it's difficult to do, but you know, maybe we're at the point in the year where the team is now learning to play without their superstar. You know, they're learning to play without Julian Boyd, and you kind of reinvent yourself in a way as you head through conference season. Before we go, I just wanted to throw out another one to you. Going back even before the mid-'90s games between the two programs, here's another score that just kind of jumped out at me. Maybe I didn't know if you knew this game. 117-115 in overtime, 1991, MVP Brent McCollin, who I watched play. Any recollection of that one?
I was not. No recollection of that one. This is you know, long before my time at LIU. I know Brent McCollin was a 1,000-point scorer at LIU. Little guy, could you know, had great range, could shoot it from deep. That was a good LIU team though. A bit high scoring, very similar to some of the recent St. Francis teams. Very high scoring. I don't think the focus was on defense by either team back in the early 90s.
No, you know, I know that's true. Here's a few stats before we go here. So LIU leads the Battle of Brooklyn series 21-16. 7 games have gone to overtime. 8 times 100 or more points have been scored, and 16 times 90 or more points have been scored. So your theory about the defense is it's right on there. So I want to thank you, Greg Fox, LIU Associate AD, for taking the stroll down memory lane. for the NEC on the Run podcast tomorrow, 7 p.m. on MSG2 and Fox College Sports. 38th Annual Battle of Brooklyn Series, LIU Brooklyn, St. Francis, Brooklyn. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Ron.
I'm John Kelly Jr. This is the inaugural NEC 9, the top 9 plays of the week at NEC Hoops. At number 9, Wagner's Mario Moody shows why he's one of the top high flyers in the NEC with this big slam versus Bryant on Saturday. At number 8, Central Connecticut's Lauren Arbogast hits a halftime buzzer beater Saturday against the Mount. At number 7, Kayla Grosso with a 6-spin move. Mount St. Mary's would go on to win in overtime 86-84 over Bryant. At number 6, LIU Brooklyn's Jason Brickman shows why he's the NEC leading assist man, lobbing this alley-oop to Jamal Olasaway. At number 5, Fairleigh Dickinson's Mustafa Jones throws in a long bomb at halftime Thursday against LIU Brooklyn. At number 4, St. Francis Brooklyn's Jalen Cannon with a monster slam and a win Saturday over FDU.
And I just stood up on that one. If you just watched the NEC, we're going to replay it for you later, but what Jalen just did is took the elevator to the top floor, left Fairleigh Dickinson on the bottom.
At number 3, St. Francis used double-double machine Earl Brown with a powerful reverse slam on NEC-TV against Sacred Heart. At number 2, LIU Brooklyn goes the length of the court in 3.9 seconds, and Brandon Thompson knocks down a 3 at the horn to send the game to overtime. The Blackbirds will go on to defeat FDU 79-75. And finally, at number 1, the unlikely hero, freshman Shane McLaughlin, lays it up with 6 seconds to go in overtime to beat Mount St. Mary's 79-78 and keep Bryant undefeated in conference play. That's all for this week's edition of NEC On the Run Hoops podcast. We'll see you next week on NECFrontRow.com.